hate this? I really can't decide. And until then, he sits in solitary confinement. Like, it looks cute in person, but it looks crazy in the viewfinder. What the hell is that noise? Can't wait to edit this one. Largest Air Force base. If I said that this move complete... What is up, you guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to another gruesome Get Ready With Me video. If this is your first time seeing my face, hey, how you doing? My name is Jessica, and every week I sit down here and I talk about a true crime case whilst I put on some makeup. So if you're interested in true crime, makeup, or a combination of the two, then please consider subscribing to the channel and liking this video. Speaking of subscribers, we hit 2,000 subscribers last week, and I cannot even begin to thank you guys enough. Your love and support means the absolute world to me, and I'm truly thankful for each and every one of you every single day. You have stuck by me through so much, especially this year, and I don't ever want you guys to think that I take that for granted. I adore this community, I love this channel, and I love the direction it's headed in, and I truly cannot wait to see what the future holds. Whether you've been here since my first video or you just subscribed today, just know that I love and appreciate you all so much more than I could ever begin to put into words. That said, if you're just finding the channel and you're not into what we've got going on here, that's perfectly fine. I understand that it's not for everyone. So if you happen to be turned off by the concept of true crime and makeup, don't fret. You don't have to skip the story altogether. For your convenience, I've listed some other creators down in the description box that have covered today's story in a way that perhaps you may find more enjoyable. I did that for you, because I'm a kind and generous person. You're welcome. And now that I'm done singing my own praises, we can go ahead and get into today's case. Y'all, today's story is absolutely fucking wild, and I'm honestly willing to bet that a lot of you have heard this story in some capacity or another before. It's definitely one of the more widely covered cases that I featured here, but somehow I just recently came across it and I could not ignore it. It really is the epitome of you simply do not know anything about a person. People really do just be out here having whole ass secret double lives that their closest family and friends are none the wiser to. It is crazy. And our journey through depravity and duplicity this week comes in the form of Canadian Air Force Colonel Russell Williams. David Russell Williams was born on March 7th, 1963 in an English town named Bromsgrove. He was the first of two children born to his parents Christine and Cedric Williams, with his little brother Harvey coming along about 2 years later. Now, from what I could gather, it seems like Russ had a decent and, dare I say, privileged upbringing. Oh yeah, by the way, I'm going to be calling him Russ throughout this video because, one, it's less of a mouthful, and two, apparently that's what he prefers.
Call me Russ, please.
So both of Russ's parents came from fairly well-off families, and as a result, they had both settled nicely into their own respective and pretty lucrative professions. His dad was a scientist and his mom was a physiotherapist, so it should go without saying that they were both incredibly intelligent and driven, and they worked hard to provide for their sons. In 1968, when Russell was 5 and Harvey was just 3, Cedric accepted a job offer at Chalk River Laboratories, which was a nuclear research lab located in Chalk River, Ontario. So the Williams packed up their lives and immigrated over 3,000 miles across the Atlantic Ocean to Canada. And while it probably wouldn't surprise you if I said that this move completely flipped their lives upside down, that just wasn't the case, at least at first. They actually seemed to settle quite nicely into their new life in North America. The kids seemed to remain happy and positive and adjust well, and the family as a whole quickly made some friends in their new neighborhood. Most notably, they became very close with a couple named Jerry and Marilyn Savka. And when I say very close, I mean very close. So close that when Cedric and Christine's marriage started to fall apart, Cedric actually went running to Marilyn, which led to the two of them starting their very own affair. And then, just 4 months after Christine and Jerry found out about the affair and filed for divorce from Cedric and Marilyn, they got married. And even though I think we can all admit that this is a little bit weird, it really didn't seem to rattle Russ at all. Although he lived with his mom and stepdad, he still maintained a decent relationship with his dad. And as far as his behavior went, he showed absolutely no outward signs of being bothered at all, like even in the slightest. He was a polite and friendly kid. He never really got in any trouble. Overall, it honestly sounds like he was a pretty great kid. Spoiler alert, it does not stay that way, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. In late 1978, Russ's stepfather was put in charge of a project in South Korea, so the family packed up and moved like thousands of miles across the world again. And yet again, something that you might think would totally derail the average teenager barely seemed to faze Russ at all. Quite the opposite, really. He loved living in South Korea at first. However, being that he was a Caucasian person, he often got mistaken as being American, which eventually led to some of his classmates teasing him and calling him a Yankee, which he was actually really embarrassed and really bothered by. And I can't for the life of me imagine why.
I am a U.S. citizen. I'm entitled. I'm obnoxious. People hate me. Where the hell else would I be from?
I'm kidding. Please do not come for me. I promise it was a joke. Anyways, luckily for Russ, he didn't have to put up with this misdirected ridicule for long. Because after just about a year of living in South Korea, his mom and stepdad actually sent him and his brother back to Canada to attend Upper Canada College. And this is an elite, all-boys private boarding school. And Russ did really, really well throughout his time at UCC. He was even chosen to be a prefect during his final year. Which, sidebar, if you also thought that prefect was a made-up title used only for the elite students in Harry Potter, like I did, turns out, nope, they're real and we're dumb. Following his high school graduation in 1982, Russell attended college at the University of Toronto, Scarborough, where he studied economics and political sciences. And while he was in college, Russ moved into a house with, I think, like 5 other guys, which when you first hear that, you're probably like, ew. Because the thought of 6 college guys living in a house together sounds like an actual fucking nightmare. But not Russ's house. He made sure of that. He was obsessed with making sure that their house stayed clean. He made a schedule of chores for each roommate, chores that he himself had designated to each of them. And on top of that, Russ spent countless hours doing extra cleaning around the house because he could not stand the idea of living in a messy home. But don't worry about him because even with his obsessive, compulsive cleaning habits, Russ still knew how to have fun. Okay? He was no party pooper. And his favorite means of entertainment was a good old practical joke. He loved tinkering with the locks in the house so that his roommates' keys wouldn't work, or he would pick their bedroom locks and hide in their rooms and wait for them to get home so he could jump out and scare the shit out of them. And I have to admit, that's funny. Not the picking the lock part, but the jumping out and startling your friends. That's funny. Who doesn't love a good jump scare? Anyways, the point of the story is the lock picking. So, remember that, okay? So, fast forward a few years, and it's 1986. Russ has graduated college. He's got his bachelor's degree. He's still working part-time on the campus. The other part of the time, he's working at Red Lobster. And when he's not home crushing Cheddar Bay biscuits, he's at the movie theater watching Top Gun. Okay, so I don't know that he liked Cheddar Bay biscuits. I figure it's a safe assumption, but I don't know for sure. But I do know that he loved him some Top Gun. It started out with him just enjoying going to the movies kind of frequently following a pretty difficult breakup. But from there, it evolved into a full-blown obsession with Top Gun specifically. He watched it so frequently that he knew every single word to it. But that wasn't enough for him. Because somewhere along the lines, he decided that he'd rather live it than watch it. So, in 1987, he joined the Canadian Air Force. He officially became a pilot in 1990, or got his wings, if you will. And from there, he was stationed in Manitoba, where he briefly worked as a flight instructor before he was promoted to captain in January of 1991. Then, exactly 5 months later, Russ married a woman named Mary Elizabeth Harriman in a quaint little wedding ceremony in Winnipeg. Things seemed like they were going exceptionally well for our old buddy Russ. He was happily married, he had his dream job. I mean, life seemed good. Speaking of his job, Russ was highly respected throughout the Air Force. He was flying through the ranks. Pun intended. He'd gone back to school and earned a Master's of Defense Studies from the Royal Military College in Ontario. He was trusted with the responsibility of flying incredibly important individuals, from high-ranking government officials, foreign dignitaries. Here he is with the literal Queen of England. R.I.P. He also flew the Duke of Edinburgh, the Governor General of Canada, the Prime Minister of Canada. He helped plan security for the 2010 Economic Summit attended by none other than Barack Obama. So you could definitely say that he was a big deal. Frequently described as an elite pilot or a shining bright star of the military, Russ received his promotion to colonel in January of 2009, 6 months before he took over as commanding officer at Canadian Forces Base, or CFB Trenton, in July of the same year. And CFB Trenton is the largest Air Force base in Canada, so he was pretty important. He was highly respected, and he was about to flush it. All of it. Everything he had worked so hard for. Just straight down the fucking toilet. But before we get into that, I have to explain Russ and Mary's living situation. Okay, so they had I guess I'll call it their main home, which was in Ottawa. But on top of that, they also owned a cottage on Cozy Cove Lane in Tweed. And that was about 2 hours away from the main Ottawa house. And because it was significantly closer to the base, during the work week, Russ would stay alone at the cottage. And then Mary would come and visit him on the weekends. So even though they were happily married, at least as far as I was able to find, Russ and Mary were definitely spending more time apart than they were together. But don't you worry about Russ, because he did not let that alone time get him down. No. Instead, he honed in a new and disturbing hobby. Fetish burglary. Yep. It started in 2007 when he broke into his neighbor's home. They were out of town at the time. So he let himself into their cottage, and then he proceeded to help himself to not just his neighbor Monique's undergarments, but he also explored the undergarments of her 12-year-old daughter. Yeah, buckle in, because it only gets worse. Not only did he look at her underwear, but he put it on, he laid on her bed, and then he began burping the worm, if you catch my drift.
Disgusting!
Oh, and he also took photos of all of this so that he'd have, nice little memento to remember his time there. And that was it. After this first break-in, he was totally and completely hooked. He'd zero in on a target, he'd kind of survey their house, and then eventually he would break in and go on a full-blown underwear raid. Once Russ would get into the homes, he'd find the appropriate room, take some pictures of it, find the underwear, lay it out, take some pictures of that, and then he'd put on a fashion show, posing and making sure to take lots and lots and lots of pictures of himself. And then finally he'd pleasure himself, which, yes, he also thoroughly documented. Then he'd clean up whatever mess he made and slip undetected back out of the house, underwear in hand. And he wasn't picky. Women, young girls, or anything in between. As long as he could find some girl's underwear to try on, he considered his mission a successful one. And the crazy thing is, for the most part, none of these women or girls even realized that anything had happened. I mean, think about it. I don't think I could recall from memory every pair of underwear I own. And even if I couldn't find something specific, I guarantee that I'd just assume it disappeared into whatever alternate universe socks seem to disappear into. I surely would never suspect that my neighbor broke in my house, paraded his hairy balls around in my underwear, and then ran off with them. I can guarantee you that. So the majority of these break-ins were never even noticed, let alone reported. That said, there were a few women that definitely noticed, because sometimes Russ would leave just sweet little notes for the women, either thanking them for their underwear or, threatening them. So obviously these women knew that something had gone on, but even so, Russ never left behind enough evidence for police to trace the burglaries back to him. We're talking, he did this over 80 different times, and no one had even the slightest inkling that this beloved Air Force colonel could possibly be responsible. He was living two completely different and very contrasting lives, and he was the only one who knew about it. He felt untouchable. And what do these lunatics always seem to do when they're consistently getting away with this kind of crap? They escalate and they get sloppy. And Russ is certainly no exception to that precedent. But before we get into that, I'm going to take a quick break. I'm going to pop on my liner and lashes, and then I'll be right back. Don't go nowhere. Okay, so September 30th, 2009. 46-year-old Lori Massicott, who was a divorced mother of 3, living alone in Tweed, had fallen asleep on the couch in her living room while she was watching TV. Unbeknownst to Lori, Russ had actually broken into her house twice before. But this third time, well, he was definitely going to make his presence known. After quietly breaking into Lori's house, Russ approached her sleeping on the couch, covered her face with a blanket, and began pummeling her head. Obviously, this woke Lori up, but she had absolutely no idea what was going on. Initially, she actually thought that her house was on fire because she couldn't see and her breathing felt stifled. But just as she began to realize that she couldn't see or breathe because a blanket had been put over her head, she heard a man's voice say to her, "There's others here. You're being cleaned out, and I'm here to control you." So I guess he wanted her to believe that he was part of a group of people that were robbing her. But that is such a weird way to phrase that. There's others here. That sounds like some shit from The Sixth Sense. Why wouldn't you just say, you're being robbed, do what I say, and we won't hurt you? Like every other robber in the history of crime. Or, my thought would be to not say anything so your voice can't be recognized, but what do I know? I'm just a lady with a camera who's never robbed anyone, so I don't know who I think I am giving robbery advice. Also, for legal purposes, my robbery advice is to not rob people, obviously. Anyways, so Lori is rightfully confused and terrified. She can't see anything. She's under the impression that there's multiple intruders in her home, and she's convinced that she's going to be killed. So, like anyone in that situation would, she began begging and pleading for her life. But as Russ bound her hands with wire, all he seemed to care about was that she didn't make any effort to look at him. He instructed her repeatedly not to try and look at him, and also asked her repeatedly if she was looking at him, which she always assured him that she wasn't and that she wouldn't. Once he'd finished restraining her, Russ then informed her that he needed to take some pictures. And Lori's like, "The fuck are you talking about? Pictures?" I cannot even imagine how confusing this must all have been for her. And Russ certainly wasn't clearing anything up, because his response was, "I need to take pictures so you know that the others have these pictures." Huh?
Can you please stop speaking in these backwoods riddles?
So Russ is taking his pictures, he's diddling himself, he's taking more pictures, he's trying on Lori's underwear, he's taking pictures. Then he started posing Lori and taking pictures of her. He had cut her clothes off by this point. He was really going all out this time. And dude, I feel so bad for Lori. Those are like two of the most vulnerable states that a person can be in. Blindfolded and naked, and then you've got a stranger yelling at you to pose in ways that are, I'm sure, not tasteful. Ugh, it makes me sick to think about someone putting another person in a situation like that. It's disgusting. Thankfully, though, when Russ was done with his perverted little ritual, he sat Lori back down on the couch and told her he was done and left. Don't get me wrong, she'd been beaten up pretty badly and she was undoubtedly scarred emotionally, but she was alive, which is more than I can say for Russ's next two victims. Yes, just over 2 months after his attack on Lori, Russ escalated even further to just full-blown murder. On November 24th, 2009, Russ broke into the home of 38-year-old Corporal Marie France Comeau. Just like with Lori, this was not his first time breaking into Marie's home. However, it was his first time doing so while she was there. He quietly made his way in through a basement window before hiding behind her furnace. And he had every intention of remaining there until she went to sleep, and then he planned to make his move. What he didn't anticipate, though, was that before she went to bed, Marie went searching around her house for one of her cats, and that cat just so happened to be in the basement, staring directly at Russ behind the furnace. And eventually, when Marie finally found her cat, she could tell that something was bothering it, something behind the furnace. And sadly, when she went to investigate, before she could even process what was happening, Russ burst out from behind the furnace and began repeatedly hitting her in the head with his flashlight. Marie put up a hell of a fight, though, and the two struggled to gain the upper hand for quite a few minutes. But eventually, Russ took control of the situation and restrained her and began his usual routine. Underwear, photos. This time he raped Marie, and all this time she tearfully begged for her life. She pleaded for him not to kill her, that she didn't deserve to die, which is just, it breaks my heart into a million pieces. This guy is a fucking monster. Therefore, her pleas fell onto deaf ears, and after hours of forcing Marie to endure this nightmare, Russ placed duct tape over her nose and mouth and ultimately let her suffocate to death around 3:30 a.m. on November 25th, 2009. He then took pictures of her body as well as pictures of himself cleaning up the scene with bleach, because why not stoop as low as humanly possible? And when he finally left Marie's house, he drove straight to Ottawa for a meeting like it was just any old regular day. Well, except for the fact that on this commute, he ditched some evidence like his shoes and some rope out the window while he drove. Marie's body was discovered later that same day by her boyfriend. He went looking for her after she failed to show up for a dinner date that they had scheduled. Okay, so what I'm about to say might be an unpopular opinion, but hear me out. I don't know if I think he initially intended to kill Marie when he first broke in. I kind of lean more towards the idea that he planned for her assault to go down similarly to Lori's, where he would be able to obscure her vision before she knew what was going on, and then he could, go from there. But I think because she knew him personally, she'd worked as a flight attendant on multiple flights that he'd piloted, and I think that when she saw him, even though he had a mask on, he worried that eventually she'd be able to identify him if she went on to report the break-in and the assault to police. My thoughts are that if he intended to kill her from the get-go, I just don't understand why he would have been trying to wait for her to go to sleep. I mean, I guess maybe he figured that she wouldn't be able to put up a fight if he could subdue her while she was asleep. And I mean, obviously I could be completely wrong. I don't know what the hell was going on in this man's head. But between that and the fact that he took a few weeks off from breaking into anyone's home following Marie's murder, leads me to believe that her death really spooked him. That said, he certainly didn't cool down for very long. On January 28th, 2010, Russ broke into the home of his final victim, 27-year-old Jessica Lloyd. Russ had initially noticed Jessica through a window running on her treadmill the day before, and once he vetted out her home and made sure that she lived alone, he parked in a field behind her house and waited patiently for his opportunity. He broke into her home that night and made his way into her bedroom. He then proceeded to strike her in the head, restrain her, take photos of her, and he even videotaped himself raping her. Jessica did everything she possibly could to cooperate with Russ in an effort to hopefully save her own life. She followed all of his directions, and she even apologized to him multiple times when she felt like she did something wrong. But even with her unwavering cooperation, devastatingly, after about 3 hours, Russ kidnapped Jessica from her home and drove her back to his. And ooh, if you all thought that this couldn't get any worse, think again, because it's about to. Once Russ had Jessica back to his house, she actually ended up having a seizure, after which she begged him to take her to the hospital, which he refused to do. So then she asked him to please, if she died, make sure that her mom knew she loved her, which is just so fucking sad, dude. Oh my God. And in response to this, this animal raped her again, made her believe he was going to let her go, and then knocked her out, strangled her with a rope, took more pictures of her dead body, and then buried her in a shallow grave later that day. When Jessica didn't show up for work that day, her family rushed to her home to check on her. They knew that just wasn't like her. And while they did find some of her personal belongings like strewn about in the driveway, obviously Jessica was nowhere to be found. So her family immediately called the police and reported her missing. And after a preliminary search of her property, police recovered what appeared to be a footprint as well as a tire track in the mud in the field behind her house. A huge search was launched for Jessica, including police, community volunteers, and military search and rescue crews from CFB Trenton. And who do you think authorized the use of these resources? If your guess was the devil himself, then way to go. You're correct. Now, beyond the actual, boots to the ground search for Jessica, police were also on the lookout for a match to the tire impressions they found at her house. So they began conducting extensive searches of every vehicle driving along Highway 37, which was the main highway that ran by Jessica's house. And eventually they did spot a similar tread on the tire of a Nissan Pathfinder that just so happened to be passing through. And who do you think was driving said Nissan Pathfinder with the tires that had similar treads? If your guess was the devil himself, once again, great job. So they stop Russ and they're like, bro, your tire treads, what up? But Russ completely blew off their questions. He's like, tire treads? Mine? No way. Then he told them that he had to get home to his sick kid, but he's like, you know what? Good luck on your search, guys. Okay, bye. And then he just took off, spit and gravel, just trying to get the hell out of Dodge. But it was too late. The fact that his tires matched the track marks they recovered from Jessica's property was more than enough for them to put him under surveillance. Not to mention the fact that he'd acted like a fucking weirdo when they'd stopped to ask him about it. I mean, that definitely didn't help his case either. And neither did the fact that they eventually found out that he didn't even have a kid. So finally, on February 7th, 2010, Russ was brought in for questioning. I will link as much of the interview as I can down in the description box. The whole thing is definitely worth a watch. It's infuriating, don't get me wrong. He's smug, he's arrogant, he's chomping his fucking gum like a cow chewing on cud. It's just an all-around bad time. That said, he was cooperative with police. He agreed to submit DNA, blood samples, fingerprints, anything and everything that they asked for so that they could rule him out. He gave them all of it. No questions asked. Not even when it came down to the boots that he was wearing. Yes, you heard that right. He wore the same boots that he wore when he murdered Jessica to his interrogation with police about her murder. Idiot. I think it was around hour 5 when he finally started to crack. It was right around when they revisited the tire tracks and confronted him about the matching boot print comparison. From there, he kind of just unraveled. They asked him where they could find Jessica's body, and his response was, "Got a map?"
So where is she? Got a map?
Russ would eventually plead guilty to the murder of Jessica Lloyd, the murder of Corporal Marie France Comeau, the sexual assault of Lori Massicott, as well as the sexual assault of a young mother that he'd committed like a week or two before that, and he pled guilty to over 80 break-ins. I mean, he really had no other choice than to plead guilty with as much evidence as police had against him. Oh my god, taking that to trial would have been so stupid. There were so many pictures and videos and souvenirs recovered from Russ's home. The man kept an Excel spreadsheet of every break-in he'd committed. His goose was beyond cooked. And I really don't think that he cared too much about what all of this meant for him. During his interrogation and confession, he never really seemed like all that concerned with his own well-being. Well, he did ask for discretion, which, considering the fact that photos like this are readily available on the internet, he didn't get it. But for the most part, his concern seemed much more with what this was going to do to his wife and what impact it would have on the Canadian Air Force. And he was right to worry, because ever since all of this came out, his wife has been not only accused of knowing what he'd been up to all this time, but in 2016, she and Russ were actually sued by Lori Massicott. So his transgressions did, in fact, have a massive negative impact on Mary, who, sidebar, did end up divorcing Russ in 2014. And she has always adamantly denied any knowledge of her now ex-husband's perversions. Ravaged with guilt, or embarrassment, or some combination of the two, Russ did actually try to punch his own ticket while in jail by shoving a stuffed toilet paper roll down his throat. I don't know, I guess you use what you got in that kind of situation. But he was unsuccessful and subsequently put on 24-hour suicide watch and transferred to solitary confinement. On October 21st, 2010, Russ was sentenced to 2 life sentences for first-degree murder, 2 10-year sentences for sexual assault, 2 10-year sentences for forcible confinement, and 82 one-year sentences for breaking and entering. And all of these sentences are to be served concurrently, meaning that he'll have to serve a minimum of 25 years before he's eligible for parole. So he's for sure got, 12 or 13 years left. And that'll put him at the tender age of 72 before he's eligible for release. And until then, he sits in solitary confinement at a maximum security prison in Kingston, Ontario. Following his conviction, Russ was stripped of his ranks and awards. His uniform was burned. His medals were cut into pieces. His Pathfinder was turned into one of those little metal car cubes. They were not messing around. They wanted to do anything and everything they possibly could to wash their hands of him. However, and brace yourself because this is going to piss you off, you know what they couldn't do? Take his pension. Yep. So that man is still raking in $60,000 a year from the military he dishonored. I don't exactly know how it works with him being in prison, like how much access he has to it, but it's still pretty infuriating that he's entitled to it at all. But I mean, what are you gonna do? Now, before I wrap up for the day, I just want to tell you a little bit about Marie and Jessica, because they deserve to be remembered for who they were, not because of their forced connection to this loser. Marie is remembered as a fun person with an amazingly positive outlook on the world. She was always happy, she was always smiling and laughing, and in the words of one of her friends, her smile will forever live on in the hearts of those who knew her and were lucky enough to call her a friend. She had an incredible zest for life. She wanted to travel as many places as she could, see as many sights as possible, and I don't know why I love this in particular so much, but she wanted to taste as many different foods from around the world as possible. And I just think that is such an adorable and wholesome goal. And it is so sad that her life was cut short, all because some selfish pervert wanted to get his rocks off. Ugh, it is really not fair that this kind of stuff happens to anyone, but especially to such seemingly wonderful people. And as for Jessica, she is remembered as a kind, friendly, and fun-loving person. She was incredibly funny, always quick with one-liners, and she just loved to make people laugh. She too had a magnificent outlook on life, and she loved spending time with her family and friends. She is greatly missed by those who knew her, and their many fond memories of her are held near and dear to their hearts. And with that, we are about wrapped for today. Let me know your thoughts on this case in the comments down below. Oh, and by the way, I absolutely copied the shit out of this makeup look from something I saw on Pinterest. So I'm going to link the original artist down below. Make sure to check her out if, you're into what's going on here. Other than that, as always, I thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video and to listen to this story. If you haven't already and you'd like to, go ahead and subscribe to my channel and turn on the post notifications. I put out new videos every week, and I'd love to catch you back here in my next one. But until then, stay safe and have a good week. Bye, guys.